Lisa and Grace on Afro Vibes Radio. And today we have the amazing, the most
gorgeous,
the most qualified,
the talented,
the most inquisitive, I don't know.
Probably funny. Has a little bit of that.
Before, I don't want to mispronounce your name. So could you let us know, how do you say your name?
Iana. Nothing like it's spelled, Iana, and the last name is Ma'at.
Oh, I love that.
Where's the last name from? Ma'at.
The last name is an ancient Egyptian word, Ma'at. So my husband changed his name.
Yes.
He got woke and changed his name. Yes.
We love it.
That's awesome, because even for me, my name is Issa, and most people say like Yisa, or my full name is Isabel. And
yeah,
so
I
used to call you Yeast.
Yeast?
I'm joking.
But I never answered that one.
It's YSA.
So I get, like, people not pronouncing your name correctly. That's awesome. So you were telling us a little bit before we started.
Mm-hmm.
You're really focused on mental health.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You want to speak for me? No. Go ahead, Grace. Go ahead.
I was going to say, how did you get started out in mental health?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So I have been counseling for 20 plus years now. And I started out really in the social work field. My background is in clinical social work. And so I've worked in child welfare environments, counseling, and being a school therapist, and then all the way to psychiatric hospital, being chief clinical officer there. And then now in the process, having been doing couples counseling with my husband, who's also a therapist, and is my best.
There you go. That's a power couple if I've ever seen.
That is a power couple. Dang.
Yeah, that right there. Just I love working with people just around change and shifting, because I always say you teach and you're attracted to what you need to do. Mm-hmm. So I need to shift and change, and so it inspires me to do the things that I need to do by working with others. But the couples work has been really, really powerful, and so we launched BlackLoveAndMarriage.com a decade ago. Mm-hmm. That just blossomed into my husband going back to school and us starting to do the counseling together. And then more recently, we have launched Perspective and Therapy for Black Folks. And that is a platform where you will be able to, we're launching this summer fully, have your phone or your laptop or your computer, your tablet right in your pocket. You'll have your therapist. You'll be able to get counseling from a qualified licensed professional therapist.
So when you say, is it this summer or next summer?
This summer, we're launching this summer, so we're coming up really close, and we're prioritizing the Black community, and we are really prioritizing culturally competent counseling and the ability to, have a ongoing access to your therapist. So instead of being able to have to wait once a week or every other week, you can text your therapist, you can have live sessions, you can do chats, and it's a subscription service. And so we're just really excited about that and being able to really kind of bridge the gap between Black folks and getting the help that we need, because we're always like, well, who is it?
Right. No, and that's really awesome, because I think a lot of times there's such a stigma to mental health and getting help and therapy for sure. People either think it's for crazy people or it's just not for them in general. They don't need it. And I think that, making it more normal, where it's like a text or a call, and it's not some, room, like some dark room that you think of and it's way over there, acclimating into our normal routine. I think that, and making it accessible, I think that's the next step to destigmatizing it. So I think that's awesome, and Black folk, we need it.
Yeah, because there's certain things that, like, you go to a Caucasian therapist and they won't understand what you're going through, just because they cannot be in your shoes.
Right.
So.
That's right. So we need to bridge that gap and be intentional about it. And really, there is a lot of research that it really shows that there is provider bias, whether it's conscious or unconscious. Right. So there are a lot of things that get in the way that even well-meaning white folks just don't even know that it's not helpful in terms of some of the assumptions that are made and that kind of thing. So I believe that we all, especially Black folks, we have a right to be able to get culturally relevant counseling that meets us right where we are.
Right. I think that's awesome, because even like for my nonprofit, the Mental Health Hub, we specifically give mental health resources, but for like, I'm looking for a Black therapist who is more understanding from a Black perspective, normally who is Black, or I want a therapist that is LGBTQ plus conscious, or I want someone that's focused on postpartum, so we really try and meet people where they are, you know. And I think that what you're doing as well, focus on the Black community, I think that's huge, because a lot of resources are really not focused on the Black community. It could be available to Black community, but it's not targeted to us. And I think that's important.
The small ones they have, like Dr. Rita, not her last name, but the book that she made about like Black mental health. Yes. Those sell out quickly because it's like
people need it.
We need it, and that's like that one source. What are some mental health myths that you see in the Black African American community? That you would like to?
Yeah, I think, you know, there are some common ones that if you're in the Black community, you're like, oh yeah, but if you're not, you just don't even recognize that that's a thing. And I think one of the things that is prominent is this piece around feeling as though perhaps you're not strong enough, or you don't have enough faith. Your relationship with God is not on point if you feel as though you need to get some help. And particularly because our history looking at Black people across the diaspora has been one where we've had to overcome. We had to, you know, endure struggle. So if my ancestors were able to do all that, why is it that I need some help today and I can't just pray and get my act together because I'm in a better place than they were? So there's this kind of,
it's a guilt. It's a guilt for sure.
You're not strong enough, you know, that you're weak. And then in the Black church specifically, you know, and Christianity specifically has really put a burden a lot of times on, you know, don't go talking to those folks who are going to, you know, put you in a certain kind of label, and they don't really understand how God works and that kind of thing. And so people, you know, of African descent specifically really have to merge. For a lot of Black folks, especially Black women, faith is a very big deal. And so not having to split off that part of yourself, being able to bring your faith life into the counseling office, you know.
No, I think that's a really good point. That's a really good point, because people grow up and, you know, our dads are both pastors and we're both raised, you know, in a very, very spiritual background, Christian background. And I feel like it is that, right? You pray, you pray it away. You know, you think that you need to pray, you need a really deep and maybe prayer and fasting. But, you know, anxiety, depression, a lot of mental illnesses are biologic. Right. And they're biological. And I feel like it's okay. Spirituality is one, but also mental is another. Just like financial and physical is also another part. All part of your lifestyles, right?
Just because it's not as tangible as having like COPD or bronchitis, that they don't see that the need is there, but it's very, very, very there.
Real.
It's very there.
Very pertinent.
Wait, so I have a question. So you are lucky, or maybe unlucky, where you're married to a therapist. How is that?
Does he read you every day? He's like, you're manipulating me. Gaslighting.
He's like, you are mad because I did this. I will tell you what you should be feeling.
Right. Are you being defensive right now? Are you projecting?
You know what? I'm telling you, if anybody has to, actually, we don't do that. I would say early on, we might have done that a little bit more. And if anybody was doing it more than somebody else, it was me. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't him. But I will say that it's been helpful for us because, you know, we get into little stuff and then we realize, like, we're not supposed to be doing that. You know, we need to kind of take a break or, you know, do something different. But it's really been good because we're interested in the same things. We are very much, you know, passionate about Black people, about the Black family, about some of the unique challenges that Black people have in the world and in this country specifically, and how the Black family and how Black couples have suffered from that. So there are things that I never consider, never think about because I'm not a man. And there's understanding that I have that he just don't even get. And I'm like, oh, you kind of operating off some patriarchy right now. And he's like, oh, for real, you know? And so we can just kind of, you know, contribute to one another, and it's a safe space. But we do have to sometimes like learn how to turn it off and be like we chilling right now. Why are we still talking about, you know?
That's true, because you spend a whole day, you know, working with other people's problems, and then you come back. Do you ever feel like you're tired and does it affect you guys' relationship on the other side, where you're like, I'm tired of analyzing, I've been doing it all day, and he's kind of trying to talk to you about maybe something that he's going through or you guys are going through, but you're emotionally spent by the end of the day or a week?
I would say, because I am very verbose, I talk a lot. The way that I relieve my stress is through talking.
Really? You're on a talk show right now.
I'm out.
Yeah, I'm like, that's not a problem for me at all. If he's here for it, I can talk all day, every day. He, on the other hand, would probably say yes. Like, he's, you know, He's complete. I'm a Leo. He's a Pisces. You know, we just got different energies. He's more chill. I'm like, well, he's like, babe, we need to pause. You know, so I would think he would answer yes. He's spent at the end of the day, after session after session. But I actually get more energy and feel more energized, and the more I talk, the more alive I become, and he's like getting drained. Right. And so we just have different experiences.
I'm like him.
You are, and I'm like her. So what does that make you?
This is
you're all right. You're my better half.
Speaking of better halves, relationships, I guess in your counseling sessions, have you seen the difference between counseling someone of like Gen Z or millennial generation?
Yeah, definitely. I think that the biggest things that I've seen, well, there's a lot of differences. And one of the biggest ones, though, is that just in terms of how, particularly millennials, that they want to conceptualize their partnership, the priorities that they have, thinking about their careers, saying, I don't want these gender norms, trying to figure out what marriage looks like for me, and if I even really get down with marriage. And as they're trying to define this committed relationship that they're in, they are just much more free to say, I want to define this and create this in a way that's going to really work for me. And I don't want to come into this having to submit to something that has already been designed for me. Yet I know, because I am, part of a greater society, that like these things, these expectations, they don't want to be held back by expectations that don't work for them.
So how is it when you're working? Because like, I guess my age group and a little bit older, we were like, when you get to around 27, definitely 30, you should be married. You should probably even have a first child. Your life should be like this. You should have, graduate from college, try and get married, definitely get married, have a child, and you're moving on.
But now
it's like, people are like, I don't want that.
There's actually was a trend on TikTok where like people were like, had like a sweet song behind like couples, and they had like their white picket fence and the house, the ideal, and the dog, and they were like psych, and then they were like flying on jets and like being a boss, the female entrepreneur.
Right. So when you get these different types of groups, and they're all talking about the same kinds of things, being stressed, especially we're going to talk about COVID in a second and Black Lives Matter after the break, but how does your thought process change, or what you give to them as a therapist change for these different generations?
Well, I always tell folks in terms of therapy, the simplified way that a lot of people think about it is, oh, you're going to get advice. And that could not be farther from the truth, because all you're doing is going so that you can take a pause, you can have a disciplined moment where you really tune into yourself and you unpack your own answer. There are tried and true, researched kinds of ways to deal in terms of relationships and dealing with life and that kind of thing. And so I will share those things as appropriate, but fundamentally, 5 people can come to me. They have the exact same concern or issue, and they approach it 5 different ways. And if I've done that to help them get into the place where they can get rooted in like, this is what my truth is, and this is what works for me, then I've done my job. And a lot of times folks just really need some a space to really work through and process their feelings about it. What if I go this way? What is my mom going to think? What are people going to say about me? What does that mean about who I am or who I'm not? And really kind of get clear about that in terms of whatever the issue is. And then they can go forward from there. But it's really not about a one way to do things. It's really about folks being able to tap into what they really already know. I tell folks all the time, about 75% of what you need to know, even if you can't articulate it, even if it's not conscious, it's in your spirit, it's in your being. And then we're working to bring that out and to help you own that. And then there's some things you don't know because you just haven't been exposed to it, but you will either reject it or you'll receive it based on your values. It's not that you have to take it.
I like that. Because you're right. A lot of people do think therapy is advice, arbitrary advice,
Right.
And it's really, I like how you said that, a disciplined approach, retrospectively looking at yourself and unpacking your own thoughts and your own feelings and your own emotions. And I think that that's something that we really don't do. Like, for example, physically, we sleep, we exercise, we rest, we get massages, for example, we stretch, we do all these things for our body. But with mentally, we don't really have these kinds of mental exercises that are normalized, So I think that people now saying that, oh, it's just arbitrary advice. No, these things are routine. This should be a routine. And this is something that is healthy.
Absolutely.
Have you seen a trend since the beginning of when you started your therapy till now? Has there been more people asking for therapy, less people, or is it just kind of been the same?
I would definitely say, especially in the Black community, there's been a major shift, I would say, over the last decade with Black women who are really moving into therapy, just like, I don't have time for no stigma. Yeah, I'm going to therapy. I need to get some support. A lot of Black women are leading the way, not only for themselves, but for their children. Like, I want her to get she needs somebody outside of me. Yeah, I know you talk to grandma, but you need to have your own person you can talk to as well. And I would say, leading the way for men, because I would say they're typically not as open in our community, but definitely Black women have made some major shifts and strides. And then I would also say, I'm a PK too, right? So my mother and father were a pastor for 20 plus years, and they always say, don't say the Black church, like it's not one thing, there are lots of different kinds of churches, right? But so I always think about that. But what I will say is that because historically the Black church has not always been a promoter of mental health and that kind of thing and counseling, I think there's been shifts in this last decade as well, where there are lots of ministries and ministers who are saying, hey, let me bring in the counselor. Let's find a way to refer you to somebody. It's okay. I feel like there's a different message in certain settings where it is being welcomed and it's being normalized, that it's okay for you to figure out how you can get support. And you might feel good when you come to church, but when you leave, you're still dealing with the same things.
Right.
I've seen some shifts. Yeah.
Right. So let's take a quick break. We will come back and we want to talk about COVID. We want to talk about more relationship stuff because everyone we can't get enough of that. And then Black Lives Matter.
Yes. The uprising.
And the uprising. That is true.
That's what I call it.
Oh, the uprising. I like that. And you said PK, which I've never heard, pastor's kid. So really? I like that. No, I've never heard that.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah, I'm so behind. Yeah, it's fine.
It's because she's British, isn't it?
That's probably why. So we'll be back after the break. This is The Gist with Issa and Grace on Afro Vibes Radio.
Everybody, this is The Gist with Issa and Grace.
This is why I always say. Okay, on Afro Vibes Radio, we are back. And so, what do you guys want to talk about? Do you want to talk about COVID first? You want to talk about Black Lives Matter, or relationships?
The uprising.
The uprising. All right, let's talk about the uprising.
So, okay. All right. So, basically, the mental health, I'd say, of the African American community at first, when, of course, initial George Floyd passed, R.I.P., rest in peace.
He was killed?
Yes. Basically, everyone, because everything had stopped, right? Because of coronavirus, nobody could go anywhere. Lockdown. So, everyone had this opportunity to slow down. You can't think about anything. And about
no sports, no work, just stuck at home.
And so I personally have definitely been jaded by the past, like, Black Lives Matter, like, head titles, profiles, all the other deaths. And so when this one occurred, I actually felt scared. Like, before I had never felt scared before, but now I actually was.
It hit you in a different way.
Yeah, I was legitimately scared. I was like, I could truly be like, R.I.P. Sandra Bland.
Yeah, it made it real to people, right? And it wasn't just some obscure thing happening and you heard about it a month later. This happened, like, we literally watched this man suffocate to death. And I think that was such a cold, stark punch in the gut for everybody to wake us up and say, like, hey, this is real. This could be your uncle, your brother, your son, So how did that, as a therapist, how did other people, or how did we react as a community? How did the Black people seeing that react from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, we got a lot of uptick in inquiries, for folks who wanted some counseling. We also have a Facebook group, Therapy for Black Folks, and there's a lot of activity in that group. And folks were really, I think the thing that was standing out the most is that people were really being traumatized. It was this trauma reaction where folks didn't have any safe space that they felt that they could go to because they really wanted to just be with Black folks. Like, can we just come together and can we talk? And can I share? Because I don't know if I can do that on my job. I don't know if I can do that anywhere. And so people were really struggling with feeling very angry, a lot of anger, a lot of rage, and then also a lot of fear. And I also saw, in terms of some of the social media groups that I manage, I saw a lot of folks trying to figure out how to be, like, how do I deal with other folks outside of our community? Because people are coming and saying, hey, what can I do? And I'm like, people are like, I don't want to talk to you. And then other folks are saying, no, educate them. If they're asking, educate them. And then the other folks are like, no, like, it's not our job to educate. So there were these differences in terms of our community and how we felt we should be. And then kind of like clashing going on internally. So I just felt like all of that was a result of just being traumatized by seeing that. And so what we really did is we did some support groups online to really try to help folks be able to make a space. I'm always saying you have to make a space for yourself where you can, you can turn the TV off. You don't have to watch it all the time. You don't have to stay up to date with everything. People feeling really guilty. And then I have to say this, it really spawned, I feel like, particularly in the Black community, a come for you kind of movement. I mean,
I like that.
But like when I say come for you, I actually say that not in a nice way, meaning that if you showed up, because everybody's online more now, right? If you showed up online and your thought or your thinking process was different than what I might feel,
cancel.
The cancel culture, yes. Like people are just like ready to, kick you out the community. And that was really difficult for me because I really firmly believe that everybody has a lane. You got to find your lane and you got to figure out what your strength is. And then you execute on that strength. And if you're a unifier and you're here to unify the people, if you're here to, advocate and call out the truth, do what it is you do. But I felt like it was just a lot of trauma reaction, and it was really an opportunity for us to create safe spaces through support groups to help people be able to get their feelings out. And then the second part is to withhold judgment on some level, which is really hard to do during this time. Really hard to do.
It is, and that's that cancel culture. I mean, I don't know. I don't like it. I don't like it either because
it doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense, and it makes.
He who throws the first stone, he who has not sinned, throw the first stone.
And it's just like, to me, like, it just seems like it's extreme judgment and the consequences are not justified, and it makes everyone just be like extra precautious, right? And I feel like, when I don't know, a few years back, people were starting like, okay, well, don't say this, be politically correct. Sometimes it's very, very true, but sometimes it was overly done. And I think that this is like the next step. Like, if you're not politically correct to the nth degree, you can be canceled.
Modern day witch hunt.
Yeah, it's just really sad when you see things like that, and it's really isolatory, and it doesn't bring people together. There's no love and care and compassion behind it. It's just like, you're axed, you're done.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I don't know, I feel like it's kind of like in high school,
The thing is, it's like you're canceled and then you're trending and then you say sorry, you make the apology video.
You make money. I mean, you make money. Yeah, you make money. That's for sure, because people are talking about you.
People really think you're doing something, that you're actually elevating the person.
Right. And then what do you think about, so speaking about this, about COVID? So for example, it's now become, or it seems like it's become a negative thing to say that, oh, I have COVID. Like, if you got diagnosed with COVID, it's not like it's a bad thing. It's not like, oh yeah, I got the flu, or I have a stomach ache.
I just don't understand why it's headlines.
It's like, yeah, this person got COVID. This person got COVID. So it seems like a lot of people are just hesitant to come out and say they got COVID. They're sick and they're recovering, and So two questions. One is it really a stigma? Is there a stigma to COVID nowadays? And second of all, how do people, when they do get COVID, for example, like one of my friends, her parents got COVID, and they talked about another parent and the two parents dying from COVID. So seeing that, that's also an emotion. That also is an emotional toll on them. And so how can they go about if they are diagnosed with COVID?
Yeah. So that's a great question. Is there a stigma? And I hadn't even thought of it in that way. But when I think about, I've been on, probably as you all probably have too, a zillion Zoom meetings, right? Like, forever now, right? It's like, it's just after one after another. And I can't tell you how many times when I'm talking to people, it could be in a session, it can be in a meeting. And if somebody goes like coughs, it's probably happened probably about a dozen to maybe 20 times. They're like, I don't have corona. And then everybody laughs all awkwardly. Now
you're not even Zoom call. Oh my God!
You're not even with the person, right? You're not even with them, but they're just not hacking. They're just like, oh, I don't have corona. So do you all remember? Have you all heard when people would say, which I hate as well, but you've heard people make a statement and then right after that say no homo?
Right.
Have you?
Yes.
Yeah. Right. Because they want you to know, like, oh, that sounds gay. I have a problem with that as well. Right. But it's the same thing. It's like no Rona, but I don't have that. So I think there is some stigma to your question, around that, because people
so
are
crazy.
fearful of like
stigma around coughing and sneezing.
That's what I'm saying. I think I've seen it.
Yeah,
So,
like people hold it in. I mean, they don't.
You've seen people like
I make jokes.
They don't want to sneeze on camera, because they don't want to be trending about having corona. So that
right, it just seems sick. Like you can't even be regular sick because people are like, what kind of sickness is that?
Yeah,
crazy.
I have allergies all the time, and I literally have zero. I mean, people. There was a lady taking pictures of me, like when I was sneezing when I had allergies, and I just stared at her.
Yeah,
because I'm like,
wow.
Like what? First of all, what are you gonna do with that picture? Think about like this fear is. I mean, I don't know how it's going to transform.
Right. Especially with
when things open back up again.
No vaccine or anything in sight, So we have just a couple more minutes. Like, what is something, because I love hearing from Black people. I mean, this is why we have this site, this platform to empower us, but especially that you are a therapist and you are married to a therapist. So it's double.
Yeah.
And what is something you can leave with our viewers? So a lot of our viewers are younger. They're our age group. What is something that you can say during this time, going back to school for all of us, even though we're trending around the country, around the world, but most people are going back to school now, August and September. What is some advice you can give them?
Yeah. So what I often focus on with folks is really making two things. Making space. That's like my mantra. Make space for yourself. What does that look like? If you can't say what it looks like, then you don't do it. You might talk about it, but like, do you take bubble baths? Do you play video games and zone out? What specifically do you do to make space for yourself so that you can have downtime where you're not attached to social media, where you're not having to do stuff? If you don't have an answer for that, then whether you realize it or not, even though you may be like a busy person, whether you realize it or not, you are not taking care of yourself and mentally and emotionally, your body.
I feel like you're trying to talk to me.
Yeah, she's definitely talking to us. That's why I was like nudging us. I was like, this is for us.
Attacked.
I'm talking to myself too. So
no, this is awesome because I think that most people don't have space, especially if you're living with your family, you're living with your aunts, uncles, grandparents, or you're just not taught to have space for yourself, that it is okay.
Okay, so not only okay, but let's say so Dr. Rita Walker, I forgot her name. So
Rita Walker, yeah.
She's a professor at the University of Houston, and she's also psychiatrist.
We interviewed her a couple months ago at this point.
And she said the exact same thing for
space.
Black people in particular, creating a space for you to analyze your emotions.
And sit back and reflect. I mean, the biggest thing for me is I really say, you should have retrospection. You should have some time at the end of the week, at the end of the day, or the beginning if that's better for you and your schedule, just to kind of reflect, look back and just analyze, go back and iterate on what you did well, what you didn't do well, and how you can improve, and in a safe space, obviously. So
and it's really supremely important for Black people and Black women in particular.
Supremely,
as you all have said, we it's in our DNA to make moves, to struggle, to survive, to resist, to this, to that, and so we may not even recognize a lot of times that, oh my gosh, I'm not well, I'm not together, I'm feeling maybe sad. We don't even know because we are used to overcoming. And we're used to doing what we got to do.
Right.
So we have to create new habits for ourselves and just focus on making some space. So I think that's very,
Thank
very
you
important.
so much, Ayana. This has been a pleasure. I love that we can do this, on our show. And, it brings me great pleasure and joy just to have you on our show and give us your words of wisdom, for us and our viewers or our listeners. And so
we need it.
We need it. You need it more than me at this point, right?
I did feel very attacked in the interview. I'm not going to lie.
What? I'm talking about. But yes, thank you so much for everything. This has been The Gist with Issa and Grace on After Vibes Radio.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to